Yeah. So I'm aware of that. I mean, I'm not really, I don't think about that. So my plan is to this meeting to give some kind of introduction and some background on what is called trauma. Yeah, for quite some time, I don't know, some time, and then let's do some
comedy tomorrow, trauma tonight.
What?
Comedy tomorrow, trauma tonight. Sorry.
Huh.
I do have a background in musical theater, so I couldn't resist.
It's not drama, it's trauma.
Trauma.
Trauma, yeah. I will recommend you guys this. Scott Killaby has this skit, but it's very deep. He's talking. He calls Buddha on his personal cell.
Nice.
Yeah, I will find it. It's so hilarious. So he calls and says, "Hey, you know, sorry, can I talk to Buddha? You know, It's like, well, hang on, he's in the bathtub. So okay, he talks to Buddha. And then he asks him, hey, so you know, during your time, people were different, and so it seems like now it's different. It seems like there are different needs and all that, and so and says, well, so what do you think about trauma? Oh, first, and yeah, what do you think about trauma? And then he's like, what? To forget about it? Forget about it? Huh? It's, but like how? Because it's there and it's happening, and he said, oh, like drama. Oh, drama to forget about it, but trauma to process it. Yeah. Oh, okay, okay. And then he's like, oh, it's not cool. Why do you call me an idiot? You know, I'm just asking you. Anyway, that's a nice. There's a lot of teaching in a funny way, and yeah, I guess it's a sequel on this thing that. So although I find this, I'm trying to do. So this perspective is processing from a non-dual perspective. At the same time, I discovered that this non-duality, a large amount, a lot of the teachers who are awakened or partly awakened or whatever, they are somehow not talking about it. Many are not talking about trauma and stuff like that. And however, there are some trauma-informed non-dual teachers like Thomas Hubel, Scott Killaby, Isaac Shapiro. I mean, I hear Rupert talking and I can see he knows what he's talking about. Rupert Spira. So when I did a Hakomi training, there were many people who were like Zen monks, former Zen monks. They meditated like years and all that. And then I was friends with some of them, and they were saying that, you know, they were meditating in all these states and all that, but then they realized at some point they had a lot of trauma, and then the zazen there wasn't cutting it, wasn't doing it, so they need much more precise, specialized work with someone, you know. And actually, I don't know if you guys saw that thing with Peter Levine and Thomas Hubel saying that statistically many people who are attracted to mindfulness and meditation, they have trauma. And actually it's a way to conveniently kind of escape it into some kind of yummy, blissful, peaceful, transcended, bypassing state. Yeah. This being said, you know, I'm still having the non-dual therapy here. At the same time, some of our clients they are not into non-dual, they just have trauma. So I'm going to try to keep different perspectives. Whatever questions you have, as I talk here, just write them down or something, and then I'll give some time for questions about this. You know, plenty of time. And I even wrote some stuff here. Also, I do recommend, I sent you some PDF file, which was like one of the lead trainers in Hakomi. I sent to you by email, some very good information. That it's great written information on trauma. All right, so trauma would be what I call trauma. I mean, not me, but from this perspective, is that it is some life-threatening event or perceived life-threatening event. Even if it wasn't really life-threatening, it was perceived like that by the nervous system. So even the fact that the baby is taken from the mother, put into the glass thing, what do you call that? Incubator. He was safe and everything is good, but for the baby's nervous system, there was like drama. It's intense. It's so intense from being in the belly and now being like it's lights and all that slapped on the butt and put in an incubator. So yeah, it's important. So life-threatening or intense experience or perceived life-threatening that generates some cocktail of emotions, of three or four of these emotions, like shock, overwhelm, fear, shock, overwhelm, fear. Yeah, kind of this thing. So intense emotions, and that evoke a lot of flood of energy, and those emotions in the humans, somehow we lost the ability to process trauma naturally. I totally recommend Peter Levine. You know, he was like the father of this from the 70s, and any book by him, Taming the Lion Within, and any book by him. At the same time, I noticed that's huge amount of YouTube by him, and then I will bookmark also. There is something on YouTube or on Audible that I found great benefit from it as a therapist, one called on sexual trauma. So, and I will bookmark it a little bit for later, sexual trauma. And here's something on Audible called Sexual Healing by Peter Levine. So he was saying that, you know, the classic story that the impala or the antelope is there and then is running and then has the system to kind of pretend to be dead, or the lion kind of snatches, get her, and then the antelope kind of survival mechanism, it kind of totally limps to the ground as if it's dead, because there were more chances for survival because the lion doesn't eat dead things. And then what happens that the antelope, somehow the lion leaves and the antelope lies dead there for a few minutes, and then suddenly it gets back on the feet and then starts shaking for some time, and then goes back on to happy grazing, no PTSD. So yeah, everything is fine, and it goes on, no nightmare, no somatization, no flashbacks. Somehow that's they are able to process the intense energy of the shock. They release it, you know.
I never thought of that like that.
That's shaking medicine. There's whole groups that facilitate that.
I mean, I've thought of like the shaking thing, but I've never thought of like the connection between how animals process traumatic experiences.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They all shake.
Let's keep going. Yeah, so we kind of lost this ability, and although we have kind of less traumatic than, you know, the jungle experiences and stuff, we can say, from one angle, most average individual, especially in America. So what happens with humans is that somehow how we handle it is that this shock is happening, it's overwhelming, and then our survival instinct somehow it goes into freeze, fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. But the most dangerous one is of freezing. Somehow when there's like a shock in the system, and then some dissociation, you know, torture, rape, stuff like that. It's like one is no longer there, which makes the experience tolerable, and one doesn't feel. So in order to survive, one shuts down. And then, you know, there's this metaphor, it's like you have a huge tank, like a ship, and then there is like a salt on one of the compartments that is flooded with water. Then the ship somehow isolates that compartment which is flooded, and then is compartmentalized, put aside, so that every other compartments work. So the idea is that, and however, all that energy from the traumatic event, which is a huge amount of energy, which will kind of overwhelm the nervous system, is kind of trapped now in the body. It's trapped in the, I mean, I guess it's trapped in the body, it's trapped in the field of consciousness, but it's in the body. And say it for later. Say it for later or never. But definitely the child cannot handle it. So later, when we are more adults and more conscious, then it can resurface, or we can now process it if we are lucky, you know. And but basically, out of survival, it is buried very deep, you know, a little bit like in Inception, when the movie Inception, if you guys saw it, when you go to the elevator that goes to where you have a special key, you can't go there, and then it's locked. So yeah. Now, yeah, okay, different type of traumas now. So, or wounding or traumas. It depends. I mean, there's this idea, there's like a simple trauma, whoever came up with this, you know, simple trauma. Let's say some major traumatic event happened and that has a certain impact. It's a certain kind of type of animal. Or complex trauma, like recurring, repeated traumatic event for a certain period of time. That's obviously more difficult. So simple trauma, complex trauma, they use in clinical, like complex PTSD. All right. Another, so yeah, of course, the more repeated the system is exposed to the traumatic event, the more damage it does. Another thing, it was interesting in Hakomi when we learned that depending on what developmental age the trauma happens, it manifests in different ways. So there can be, or different, what aspects of the brain are affected. So there can be this kind of primal reptilian brain, you know, which is about survival, assault, attack, breaking boundaries. So this is more like the reptilian brain has been kind of affected. Then there is the limbic system. So it's more like relational trauma. Let's say you are not being punched, you are not cut, you are not raped, but there's some, you know, this relational attachment wounds connected to abandonment, neglect, separation. Yeah. Example, I knew someone who nice man, pretty evolved and very intelligent and handsome and great. And his mother was a prostitute and a drug addict, and then she kind of left him long time for months or come every few days in a hotel without food. He was a baby, a few months old, a year old. So basically the baby, the child, so small, it is so intense, the experience of that, you know, of abandonment, and then later again unworthiness. And anyway, this unworthiness is psychological. It's more like because the baby, what they studied more recently, and there's this book I highly recommend, especially if you work with mothers or if you when you have kids, or it's called the continuum concept. Continuum concept, where was this lady therapist who was trying to figure out why kids in the Western world are messed up and why the kids in the tribal cultures are not. And she spent a lot of time with them, with the tribal cultures, and they saw that they were doing certain things in a certain way, and then the kids will end up having a natural sense of confidence and being secure, attached, and no psychological problems, you know. And one of the main things is that they were keeping the baby supposed to be on the body of the mother for quite some time, like years or two, because the baby doesn't have the ability to self-regulate by itself, so it needs the mother to regulate, to calm itself down. It cannot do it. Also, the baby, the brain is not formed. So also, this is cool with the eye contact, is that in order to start to activate certain neuronal pathways and certain the brain starts to form, it needs eye contact with the mother. It needs eye contact. Yeah, and this thing like to look, and the baby looks, and the mother looks, and then to look away. Because if it's too much, then it's intense for the baby. So looking like this, so this kind of does all kind of stuff. I don't know the science of it, but somehow it's really needed, necessary. So, you know, that guy that I mentioned, I mean, he didn't have all that. So if you can imagine the type of shock in the frontal line, you know, because you are supposed to, you know, the baby put like this, there's contact, and now something is ripped off. I'm not sure if this one will be good for. Never mind. Okay. All right. So yeah, and then so the primal. There's the primal.
Watching the recording.
Yeah. So there's the primal. If I send it to her. So it's the primal aspect connected to really survival aggression. Then there's this thing limbic, relational. And then can be also more like you know, cognitive trauma of some type, let's say, which happens later, which is, let's say, you know, you become part of a cult. You are adult, everything is good, so become part of a cult, brainwashed and messed with, and now you have deep sense of betrayal and deep sense of distrust, you know.
What center is this connected to?
This is more like cognitive, you know, cognitive, psychological, spiritual. So the more it is, you know, the more it is, basically the cognitive is easier to work with than the limbic, and the limbic it's easier to work with than the reptilian. Also, you know, what we call as memory, we usually associate memory with images and pictures, and oh, I remember this, and I remember my grandma, and this or that. But if any wounding or trauma happens early on, the child doesn't have cognitive development. So many people are like, oh, I want to remember. You know, I had a client, she knew that the father molested her, and then the father killed himself. and early on, but no matter what she did, she tried, no images, no nothing, because they aren't images somehow. So, however, the memory, actually a large amount of memory, most memory is not like images and mental and all this stuff that we call memory. It's more like a sensation and smells, and like a certain situation, somebody has a certain look, reminds us of that look of somebody. So don't wait for some kind of picture memories to resurface. The memory may be a, a feeling state, a very difficult, unpleasant burning in the front line, you know, like often with this, yeah, this is definitely not suitable for my mother, so I'll just not send it to her. Fuck her up. You're guilty. Okay, so so all that information, oh, that's why all that system, it was a system to train the baby to kind of self-soothe and be by himself there, and put him there in another room and let him cry himself to sleep. That's really fucked up.
Yeah.
That's really bad, you know. Okay.
The dependency breeds independency. Having that close gives
Yeah.
that fulfillment.
Yeah, in the continuum concept, it was like what it says is that the child needs to have this close proximity for quite some time, and then naturally it will be like enough. It was good. Now the child is like, okay, well,
Yeah.
and also they put them, and I've seen this actually. I went to Harbin and there was a lady there. She was working at the cashier of this, and then she had this baby harnessed facing the wall,
Mm-hmm.
and without giving the baby too much attention. But the baby was kind of all the mother was doing, and it's like very cool, you know. So, so yeah, maybe first facing the mother, then facing away from her, and then the baby, the child naturally wants to explore the world,
Yeah.
because they already got this. At every developmental stage, there's something that needs to happen. So if that happened, it's good. Now we go to the next thing. Now exploration. Now, but now if the bonding, belonging, safety, being welcome didn't happen, then the other one is not going to happen. You know?
In arms deprivation.
What?
In arms deprivation. That was
Yeah.
the name that
Yeah.
Liedlock gave it.
Cool.
The author of the continuum concept.
Yeah.
Liedlock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
In
Yeah.
arms deprivation. And then Dr. Sears picked it up later.
Mm.
And he was the big doctor all about attachment parenting.
Mm.
Family bed and all that
Yeah.
stuff, you know, to rewrite Spock's rules of cry it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Big deal.
Okay, so the effects of it. So symptoms, effects. You know, you can have people that have obvious effects. You know, you come to your office, like nightmares, flashbacks. These are kind of really obvious, and you may be more like connected to some very specific clear event. You know, that's kind of easier to work with. With the early abandonment and all this, then it's a more subtle and it's more hidden, and the person might be totally fine. It just comes up when they finish a relationship, you know, and there comes the abandonment cocktail. So yeah, dissociation, dropping the bloody temperature when there is like trauma activation. Yeah, being out of the body. Also, what is called as somatization. Basically, that the unprocessed trauma, it starts to manifest as ailments in the body, a lot of ailments. And now, you know, there's a lot of research and all that, how there's a strong correlation between trauma and life expectancy, and the like blood and the you know, heart failure, and a lot of, so it's very much connected, you know.
ACEs.
What?
ACEs, the adverse childhood experiences.
Yeah.
It's actually being pushed by the Surgeon General of California,
Hmm.
like pretty heavily. The connection between adverse childhood experiences and serious disease in adulthood.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is kind of cool that the Surgeon General of California is pushing it so hard.
Yeah.
But I do a lot of work with it in Sacramento.
I thought we were just supposed to take a pill.
Yeah, totally.
Thought that was it.
Let's see.
I don't have to do anything, right?
Now, what I appreciate about, so say the cause, according to these non-dual teachings, the cause of psychological suffering is the maybe being exposed repeatedly to unawareness and absence of love. And then it's hard to be loving if one is unconscious, you know what I mean? So, so somehow through repeated exposure to unawareness and then so the divine consciousness gets now programmed with this world of separation. So basically the cause of suffering, the primal cause of suffering is the belief and the feeling that we are separate. Separate from other people, separate from the universe, separate from the planet, separate from God. So any type of psychotherapy or any type of work which doesn't change that, doesn't address that, it will be some alleviation. It will be some alleviation, and as long as there's the belief and the feeling of being separate, individual, finite body or consciousness, this we have no choice but to suffer, either strong or less strong, okay, now the idea is that, let's say, if one is on a spiritual path and one meditates a lot, or you have some great teacher and whatever, so one has dedication and one one has some type of awakening. In this teaching, awakening is like less than half of the way. It's like awakening is more like realizing that I'm not the mind, I'm not the thoughts, I'm not the body, I am awareness. So this is awakening. But this is not enough to really enjoy lasting inner peace and happiness, because we have still, although we may have realized our true nature, we have decades of acting from sense of separation. So in order to really enjoy peace and okayness, one needs to clean that up. So it's more like awakening, and then like liberation will be like, or they call it, how they call it, abiding, Okay, so what was really cool about Scott, I liked about Scott and other people that are trauma-informed spiritual teachers, like in his story, he was saying that he did a lot of work and he had a lot of addiction and all that, and then he had some serious major shifts of consciousness, and then he was feeling very groovy, peachy, great, and different world. Everything was great, everything was nice for some time, and after 2 years, bam, some sexual addiction. He started getting sexual addiction and all kind of weird stuff. So he realized on his own skin that, just awakening, it's not going to clear trauma, actually. And it's necessary to do more specialized, precise work to clear trauma. Now, for people who are on a spiritual path and they are working on themselves, like everybody here, and we feel like pretty good, and we are not so wounded and all that. But the fact that our consciousness is more awake, so to say, this is a signal to our subconscious saying that, hey, it's ready. You can bring it on now. Basically, now we have the ability and the resilience, and everything is in place in order to process all trauma. So it happens often, you know, people pretty advanced on the path, there's some old stuff come up, suddenly remember, you know. So that's great. It's great. So we shouldn't have this, oh man, what's wrong with me? I've done all this work, I still have this, you know. So that's just to know about this. I mean, I'm not going to speak about it, but there's this also the collective trauma, because, you know, actually there's no personal here. It's like a waves of all that. But what I like, so all these residuals of, you know, Holocaust, wars, genocide. I mean, the country here is created through robbery, genocide, and like assault and abuse and all that. So there's some karma to it, you know. So, but the idea is to, I liked what they said, Peter, and, you know, don't worry about, first deal with your own personal history, trauma, and don't worry about the collective one. And then as you, first we start with the closest, and then you may go, you know, other things, you know, the pain of the women being a property, and then all this violence, and you know. So
Think globally, but act locally.
yeah. Oh yeah, also I want to touch on addiction next time, but in this model of dealing with addiction, it's best, I mean, it's not useful to take it head on, and as addiction is the problem, behavior is the problem, but actually the addiction is some way the system alleviates kind of past trauma and stuff like that. So I will send you guys some information from Scott, where he talks really nice that there are some drivers behind the addiction. So you focus on the drivers, because to process what drives that, the drivers, one of the drivers are trauma. So very often people who have more serious trauma, they are much stronger tendency towards addiction. And my going into the, also just the word addiction is so charged, and it's like with shame and guilt and sin and all that. So yeah, by taking head on, it will only create resistance in the person, and will only make him feel more ashamed, and, oh, you know, I can't do it, and I'm bad, so I'm going to use some more, you know. So it's not really useful at all. Okay. So what I do in first session, it's very important to assess for trauma and to ask people straight up in a way that is accessible to them. So that's what I do in the first session with people. We talk, they share about their therapy goals and what's up and this or that. And I ask them, hey, you know, I need to ask you this. And I don't want, it's no story at all. Just like bullet, really detached. I would like to know if you have any major, serious, kind of unpleasant stuff, unpleasant events that happen in your life. You know, if they know about trauma, I tell any trauma. So anything like any violence, any gang, any serious abandonment, death, witnessing violence, sexual abuse, because I need to know that. So if you can tell me just bullets, no, you know, no feeling, no. So that's very important for us to find this out early, straight up. First session, second session, yeah. And first of all, it's very important. Also, I assess for trauma, and what they say, I'm like, okay, got it. Because from what they say, the type of events that happened or didn't happen, I'm like, okay, it already gives me a lot of information because it's not original. This is not like original, this wounding. It's kind of universal. There are patterns, and usually when this happens, very likely that I will not trust anybody. And if this happens, very likely I will not have good boundaries. And then if this happens, very likely I'm not going to be open to love. And, you know, so it already informs us about their GPS on the wounding map and stuff like that. Together with assessing for trauma, I assess for their level of resourcefulness. What I mean by resourcing, their resourcing level, I don't mean like how much money they have and all that, but I mean the level of resilience, the level of inner stability, their level of enduring discomfort, and their level of support. You know, I mean, the job, do you have money? Do you have friends? You know. Also, I do ask people for their spirituality. I'm wondering, you know, if you have any interest in any meditation, so I want to find out where is on their inner work level, spirituality, meditation, mindfulness, and all that. For me, this helps me, first of all, because this spirituality, meditation, witnessing, stuff like that, this is from one angle the ultimate resource, the ultimate stability. If they have already some experience with meditation, with some vipassana, they tell me they've been to vipassana, I'm like, oh, great, cool, awesome. And for me, because I was all the time, I was hunting of teachings and did a lot of stuff. I try to find out, and they tell me what they were into, so I can also adjust my words I use to better match what they are familiar with. But anyway, this is my thing. Yeah, so assessing for trauma and assessing for resourcefulness.
You said you assess their lifestyle too, like activities and yada yada.
Well, I do assess trauma. I ask substance use history, and you know, job and type, what's kind of, if they have any support in their life, and the degree of spirituality. All right, let's go forward. Now, what was interesting when we were at Hakomi and we learned all these great tools, these accessing tools, and you guys saw, like, you know, with you and other people, even with a guided meditation, using this awareness-based somatic stuff, what happens is that fast one can, the client can drop into some really painful, emotional, vulnerable parts very fast. And actually that's beautiful and much faster than talking therapy. So now what they taught us is very important, is that so important part of somatic work is to establish mindfulness and to keep to track what's happening, and to have the person kind of deepen into their emotional content. And then this opens up more and more, and then they go deeper into it, and there's more and more. There is some danger to that, because this can now go straight into trauma, and then if we don't recognize that you hit trauma pockets, so to say, and you go keep into deepening and accessing, they are going to be flooded, overwhelmed, re-traumatized, and then it's bad therapy. So somehow that's why it's good to know already beforehand, before going, okay, I learned this Hakomi thing and I'm going to do this, and bam, you drop them into like intense stuff. So it's good to know before a little bit. It's good to develop a lot of rapport first, and then it's good to develop first some abilities for them to resourcefulness, you know, the ability to be aware, to witness, to stay grounded. But it's important to recognize in the moment if this happens. And so the teaching was that if you realize that now you're going to trauma, you need to switch mode. So you don't want to keep accessing, because then what happens is that all this energy that was stored cannot come all at once, or if it comes all at once, cannot be integrated, cannot be processed. The idea is that trauma is basically unmetabolized, trapped sensation in the body, unmetabolized energy. So in order to metabolize it, to process it, means that this information needs to meet adult witnessing state. However, this is intense. So if it comes all at once, then the witnessing state cannot be there. And then here is the term of, I think it was in the material I sent you, there's a window of tolerance. Basically, we have to keep the client, when processing trauma, within a window of tolerance. So they are not too overstimulated, not too flooded, because then actually it's more hurtful than useful. So, yeah. Let's say, usually I do want to, I'm very happy to access that and go in and stay with that, you know, things like accessing tools, you know, just stay with this feeling that is there and really let it be and really allow it, welcome it completely and see what's happening next. This opens up and this image comes, and then, okay, stay with this image and really allow it completely. And if this, you know, so that's good work. However, when I notice that, I mean, we have to track the other person, the client. And so sometimes it it happened, you know, and also, especially if the client, let's say more sophisticated, like they've done a lot of work, their system is more open. So then actually stuff will come up fast. And so, yeah, sometimes they say I worked, I said multiple times it happened that we would be processing something, and then I notice that they are kind of don't say anything. I get some weird vibe in my body. They are like shaking or something, or there's really, I'm getting that there's some really serious stuff is happening with them. And also if they don't say anything, that's not good. So you need to know what's happening with them, especially, you know, with somatic stuff there with the eyes closed and the time is mysterious. They may think they say something, but they don't say anything. So, yeah, so let's say I noticed that the client actually was lying down there and accessed something that she was in prison. She was taken in prison and stayed there like for a few months, this nice, gentle, sweet hippie girl, you know? And so then she accessed that memory, and then she was like, it started to like a lot of stuff. And then so what I need to do, I didn't plan for that. I didn't realize it. Now I need to back out. I need to back her out of there because it's too much. So if I realized that this is the case and it's too much. We need to control that, you know, that substance, that unmetabolized information that comes at a bearable pace. Bearable, it doesn't like overwhelm the system. So when I notice that they are flooded, then I stop accessing right away, stop deepening, stop it. And I would say something like, okay, all right, so listen, basically I can have them. All right, so let's slow it down a little bit. So why don't you come back now? Just hear the sound of my voice. Tell them, hey, you are safe. You are absolutely safe now. It's me and you in this room. You are safe. Hear the sound of my voice. Notice the sounds in this room. Feel your body. So I back them out from there, you know, yeah, have them come back, and then now you know, yeah. So the idea with the trauma is that, especially in this in somatic witnessing, because actually trauma is not some image. I mean, yeah, it can have some images, but actually it's some yuckiness in the body, it's like a sensation, and it's like overwhelmed and like unpleasant sensations. The way to go is to do it little by little, very little by little. So to modulate the how much the hose comes out. This is called in titration, you know, titration. Yeah. So to say, okay, well, how about, all right, let's back up a little bit. Also, if I know that this is a, you know, minefield there, it's very likely there's some trauma there. I mean, also it's good with the client to have and all these. Go for it. Say, okay, let's do it next time. Let's go into that, you know. But before going into that, to resource the client, resource them in whatever is the most helpful for them. So, you know, for most people, mindfulness is the ultimate resource, but for some people who are not so strong at that, that's not a good resource. It's not a I'm muting you guys. No, don't. There's a cat there. Don't let the dog in.
Drama about to happen. Where's my mommy?
How about I'm going to have a bio break? 2 minutes, okay?
Did you pause the video or?
Yeah.
Good
He'll
time
be
for
back in 2 minutes. Just
titrate a little bit.
yeah. So resourcefulness could be that I mean, I went once to some prison. Other people are doing this training. There was this wonderful process, and it was like also for people in prison, it's a lot of like betrayal and loss. Basically, it's a lot of loss. It's grief, loss. So there was this process, river of grief, and the inmates didn't know what's coming. They're lying down and all that, and then so basically it's like anyway. But they had, okay, now you are going. There's like beautiful sunset, and you go this wonderful river, and you are there, and then you have somebody who really loved you, or you really love. It's right there with you, holding your hand. So imagery can be imagery. You are going in your you know, ideal safe space, and when you were happy and like wonderful safe as a child, you can picture that. or you can picture your grandma or somebody holding your hand, and so, and kind of, yeah, I guess love is a big resource.
It's called the river of suffering.
The river of grief.
River of grief.
Yeah, but it's kind of, this underground kind of process. So, so we can set it up so they feel very, very resourced. Also, the therapist is the resource now. The rapport, the unconditional support, and the fact that our nervous system ideally is more, is not cramped in stuff. So our nervous system is relaxed and present, and eye gazing and open presence and all that. Touch also is an important resource, although it is tricky with touch. I mean, in everyday psychotherapy, usually it was like that you're not supposed to touch. Actually, some very good therapists that I know, like I learned a lot from this person. He was saying, well, the client is kind of sobbing there and all that. And you're like, well, imagine an imaginary hand on your back, And I'm like, what the fuck, man? That's fucked up. In Hakomi, we were like, which is still legit psychotherapy. There was like holding, they're crying, sobbing, holding hands, holding this, holding. So this is very, very useful. And also I studied then the usual BBS, the Bureau of and they said there can be appropriate use of touch. So it's the hug, man. She's crying and sobbing, and what you naturally want to do is to hold him or her. Actually, that was really almost like unbearable for me. I was working in Millhouse, yeah? And I had this client who had serious trauma. I was a guy, 15, 16, and very dissociated and all that. And then at some point, he was like, he had this like suddenly a lot of emotions and shaking, and then he would say to me, go away, and they would say, don't go away, don't go, stay. And then he would be in his bed kind of like shaking, and I knew both clinically and humanly that the best intervention now is to just hug him, so he can just cry and all this. But that was not allowed, sexual abuse, this, that. So that was really tough. So I just sat there next to him with space between us, and I was just there, But often this is the most helpful. I have some underground videos of Ron Kurtz, the founder of Hakomi. There's some on YouTube, but there are no sessions. I got some full-on sessions where in like 30 minutes, full-grown guy will just sob in his lap, and he will be like this, yeah. And he'll be like, so that was very necessary, and nothing needs to be, it's just to allow this crying and sobbing, and so that may be the highest intervention. However, those of us who are in the system, you have to be careful with that. Also, you need to know if there's any history, if there is man and woman now. If there's man and woman, this is tricky. Still, it is very possible. Actually, it can be the ultimate healing to feel safe with a man or safe with a woman. Often, being held is not just that it's through this, but actually can flush out more pain. So that's kind of interesting. I remember that I experienced this myself. My father died, and I went to Folsom. I was doing some group in Folsom prison with inmates, but many of them were very good facilitators. They were like very good. So they could do it without me. They couldn't meet without me. because they're not allowed to congregate because they're gang members and all that. So they needed somebody from the outside. So I remember that. So I went there and I had the sweater of my dad, and I chose this guy. I was like, man, I'm like, I need to do some work. And they're like, yeah, brother, whatever you want. And so, yeah, they're like, yeah, no, let's do it now. Anything goes, you know. If you guys see that movie, The Work, yeah. So exactly,
physical.
exactly in that room there. So I chose this guy who was black. My father is white. Anyway, and I put a sweater on him, and then I'm like, what? And I wanted to talk to him. I wanted to talk to my dad, basically.
Yeah.
And this guy was in front of me, and I was like, I was a little frozen, you know, but actually I was pretty frozen with my dad all my life, you know. That was interesting. And there was never, anyway, this guy says something, and then he's like, come here. And he hugged me. You know, when he hugged me, oh man, I started bawling very much, you know. So this hugging is not just soothing, it can allow for fuller release, because usually we are holding, we are managing it. There's a part that wants to break down, and a part we are holding it. Actually, in Hakomi, they had all these things to take over one of the parts. One part wants to break down, one part wants to control it. So there's constant, and then so you can say this is too technical, but if the therapist says, hey, can I be this part for you? Then the client can fully go into the other one, and there's a movement, you know. So by being distance, they were still controlling, subconscious, unconscious controlling, to control, you know, survival, controlling, don't show, don't do, communist, not safe. But so when it hold me, then it took over that and broke down. It was great. Anyway,
Other times,
what?
It could work opposite sometimes too. I can imagine, like in my instance, I've lacked touch most of my life. Like, yeah, most of my life, and it's very difficult for me to feel safe for someone to touch me.
Yeah.
You know? Like,
Yeah.
I prefer like consent with hugs.
Yeah,
handshakes, all the things.
For sure, there's definitely consent needs to be consent. You need to ask. Also, yeah.
I was just gonna say, but I can see like the benefit of that, like going deep in a session with someone and then just being held.
Yeah, yeah. Also, sometimes can be. I mean, this need a lot of knowledge, training, and intuition. And it's not one rule. It's each person. And sometimes just a hand on the back, not an imaginary hand. I mean, I guess the imaginary hand on the back may help, but I was like, fuck you. All right. Yeah, just that, you know, it's the, and actually this was like, you know, when I was trying to find, I didn't want to be a therapist, but I was trying to find a modality that I resonate with. So I look on YouTube, somebody recommended me Hakomi, and then Ron Kurtz talks about that he had a 2-year-old daughter or something, and then at some point the daughter was there, it was 2-year-old, and then he was very sad, and then the daughter naturally reached out to touch him. So somehow this is inbuilt in us, you know, this compassion, this the touching. And actually, you know, there are studies with the regulating of stress. You have some people in stressful situation. You have a stranger hold your hand, it diminishes stress like a high percent. If a partner or a friend holds your hand, diminishes to much higher degree, you know. Okay, but definitely very careful about, you know, some people, there's like, this can be a big trigger, can be activation of trauma, sexual stuff. So that's very important. With the lady who I told you she had activation like that, I also, you know, I could see she's young, she's attractive. I felt like, you know, so I'm really careful now with this stuff for them, you know. So I'll just hold her hand, you know, hold her hand. And then afterwards, say, oh yeah, I was spinning, and I when you said that, and then you're, it was good, you know. So it's got feedback afterwards and all that. Yeah, there are ways also to put in Hakomi. That was standard procedure, but you need to know what you're doing. Now with COVID, we don't do that. So, but I had, you know, clients where they needed to cry a lot, and actually by holding them, say, hey, just let it, just wave after wave, just you know, and they needed to be held, and then they cry, and then it's good, and then like slow burn and all that, then they are good. This is not so much trauma. When people cry a lot and they are like this is actually this is more like so we allow. Yeah, I think I had a question here, like what to do when a person is suddenly has a strong emotion of anger or sadness, or, you know, and you use Hakomi to be aware of each thing, and suddenly there is this thing like a flooding. But this is just a suppressed emotion to come up, like sadness. So what to do is to allow and encourage it. Yeah, just keep going. Yeah, allow wave after wave. Like allow this. It's okay. I'm here. Just so that's good. Usually trauma, it manifests in a different way. It's more like kind of it's very choppy stuff, and maybe some of that thing processes, then may come some crying, you know. All right, but coming back to, we resource them, and then titration is like you kind of do it little by little, as if you dip your toe in it. Okay, so you dip your toe in this like pain, and you say okay, and then you get them out. All right, now come back to Peter Levine describes a lot of techniques about that, how to go into the very unpleasant sensation for a little bit, feel it a little bit, and then okay, now let's come out of it. Now feel feel your body here, feel the sound of my voice. How is it going? It's good. Okay, let's go a little bit more. So it's little by little, so that the system doesn't get flooded with that. Yeah. Now you know what Peter Levine said, and I totally resonate. He said, if you go somewhere and they say, hey, we're going to teach you how to process trauma in a weekend, just run away because it's not possible. So I'm now here doing it in an hour and a half. So that's not possible. So this is more like an intro, and also some of you already are, you know, have clinical experience, so that's different. But yeah, so it's not, you're not going to learn now how to do it like that. It's more like I'm cautioning you what to be careful about and what not to do. And in that book, Sexual Healing, a book, an audio book, he teaches a lot of things. Basically, for people who have trauma, often they don't feel safe in their body, and then they don't feel their body, and then there's no place of safety. So you're trying to create some so that they feel their body. And he's doing many exercises, like, okay, can you, all right, put your hand on your chest, on your belly, and just feel your body here. You're just aware, like here, so this doesn't go out. Or feel the feet on the floor, or feel this, or feel my hand, or what part of the body feels safe. Oh, it's my knee. Okay, so just feel that, and then you can have them access some of the traumatic sensation a little bit, and you say, okay, now come back to your knee. Yeah, and then the image of your grandma. Yes, and you're loved and all that, and let's do a little bit more, you know. So It's gradual. For me, when I didn't even know I had this stuff, I thought I'm great, I'm groovy. But I had serious, attachment wound and separation from the mother, and separation now for the grandmother, and like all kind of stuff that I didn't know I have. So also part of the trauma is that the system organizes so as not to feel. So then I was very good at some point being in a relationship, I'll be like, oh, I don't feel anything. Well, bye. Move on. No, nothing. I was feeling very invulnerable for a long time. Decades of being untouched by any separation, any this thing. Although looking back, there's all time when there was some separate, there was something, but then the right way was like, okay, some kind of, it was suppressed, you know. So the first time when it came was actually doing intentional MDMA or mushroom assisted psychotherapy, and it will come. I experienced this thing without any thoughts, without any images, just terrible states of extreme discomfort in the front line, and a lot of intense, terrible stuff. And and they just need to pass. It's almost like a kidney stone. You just need to, I mean, I was pretty resourced. It shocked me. I didn't, what the fuck is this? But it was too much. So then it's like, and some vomiting, something like that. And then it will go back down again. So I need multiple. These are, because I have no memory of that, no information, no thing. Now, if you have a motorcycle accident or somebody attacked you with this and they came, and then somebody has sexual abuse, then it's clear information. Now this is different. It can be processed differently, you know?
I'm just curious, when someone doesn't feel safe in their body, you do like a body scan or something and ask them to put their hand where it does feel safe in their body. What if nowhere feels safe in their body?
I wouldn't go any further. So because there's nothing that will sustain the shit that's gonna come up.
You wouldn't try to guide them back to their first feeling or memory of feeling safe?
Yeah, that's a good one.
Right? And then help them paint that picture.
What?
And then help them paint that picture, and then do another body scan, see if it changed or something like that. See if something shifted or opened up.
That might work. Sounds good, what you say. Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah, no, sounds good. I tend to have, especially lately, like sophisticated clients. They've done a lot of work, and so they can endure stuff, and they can resource.
Yeah.
I'm
just asking because some of my 5MEO integration clients, sometimes afterward they don't feel safe in their body or even being human again, and so it's I'll take them on a journey back to that first memories of feeling safe, and then then floodgates open and all these things. And,
yeah, that's
amazing.
That's very good. Sounds very good theoretically and practically. So you evoke a field of safety and love, which is resource.
Yeah.
Memory, somebody that loved you. Some place.
Yeah. Then I asked them where are they feeling that in their body? Where is it? It's the body scan didn't work. It's where do you feel this memory? Where is this memory coming from? What is your body telling you about it? It just builds a lot of awareness and helps them come back into their body more even. So I love that. Yeah, what you said too. It's kind of just broadening that practice a little bit more.
Yeah. Now, often shaking. So when you notice that the client is shaking, that's good. I mean, spontaneously shaking, not they're trying to shake, but usually when it just clears and it comes, it's like shaking. So that's a good thing, provided that, you know, you are there and you know what's happening and all that. And also it's important to know what's happening. And I like this in Mankind Project. Sometimes they do a kind of group intense processes and visceral, but the facilitator, they have several facilitators, and they are looking at the guy. They are looking at the guy. They want to see what's doing. If there's silence for too long, that's anything can happen. They can be in total hell land. So, yeah. So especially with Hakomi there with the eyes closed. So I'm like, what's happening right now? Where you're at now? If there's silence and all that, I mean, especially if there's edgy, traumatic information, then to, and also you can have them open the eyes, come back, you know, look at me and all that, this or that. Now, I learned this something more recently, and I tried it, and that was pretty cool. And I heard about this, and it seems to work. And you can, it's less, you can do it with anybody. Doesn't have to be a sophisticated client. Doesn't have to be too much awareness. And this is a good one for anything that is clear. Something happened. So I had this client, she was robbed. Yeah. And then it evoked trauma from the past, that she never felt safe. The masculine was never present. Where's the masculine? And I was like, I'm fucked, like, and robbed. And then so, and what was crazy is that we did some work. It was good. Next session, she was robbed again. Fuck. She was robbed 2 weeks in a row. So there was a, you know, but she was, you know, solid, strong Amazonian woman. But so I tried this method. I learned it from my boss. He told me, hey, you can try this. I was like, hey, I like that. Also, I once saw this in a movie, this therapy session. I was like, whoa, that's intense. And I checked with my boss, hey, have you heard of this? Is this some Hollywood shit or is it like real thing? They said, no, it's a real thing. So in the movie, it's desensitization. Yeah. So the guy goes, the inmate goes, and he is ambushed and gang raped in the shower. Unpleasant, right? So now comes to the therapist, and now the therapist has him describe frame by frame, moment by moment. From the beginning, earlier, I go like this, the light was like that, I go, I turn the door, I'm having shower, suddenly I hear a bam, this happens, then I see this, he says this, I feel his thing on my neck. So basically he has him describe, narrate frame by frame all the movie, and then he recorded him, and then the homework was for the guy to listen to it several times. Yeah. I was like, what? I was like, oh. But apparently that's some works.
He monsters it.
What?
He monsters it.
Yeah. Now my boss Spencer, that so he told me this. They said he liked it, and he told me I liked it, and I used it, and it was good. So this is for something that is clear, something that happened. And this, I can just teach it. It's pretty simple. So.
This is Sedona method?
No, not Sedona method. I will do that later. This is more like processing trauma, not necessarily somatic, eyes closed. So I instruct the client who was robbed, say, okay, so I am going to count from 1 to 100. Therapist, I'm going to count from 1 to 100. And then as I count, you are going to play out in your mind. You don't tell me anything, but you are going to see in your mind's eye what happened from when you were asleep and you heard something and this, and then you saw this thing. So, and I count 1, 2, 3. So there's like, they are not alone in that. They are like this. And I tell them, and I want you to go towards the worst part. So the worst part will be at 50. So we are going gradually from 1 to 50, and the 50 is the worst, most intense part. And then from 50 to 100, it kind of winds down till it finished, the whole movie. Yeah, so step 1, I count from 1 to 100 and instruct them to see this and see it like that. Now, after they do that, I say, okay, now I want you to tell me. So, and I listen, and they say, they tell me I was like this, and then I write down all that they say. They say, oh, they write like this, I hear a squeak, then this, and I go, then I see a flashlight, and this guy, and then looks at me, and was like, oh my God, and then pepper spray, and this, and that, and I write everything down, and she tells me this all until the very end. Everybody came, they cried, they went back to sleep, she had a nightmare. Okay, I write all this down. This is number 2. She did it twice. One time in her mind, second time with me. I'll tell you out loud. Now I'm like, okay, now I want you to just listen, be very present, and I'm going to, I will tell her back to her. So third time, I'm like, okay, so you were sleeping, and then you heard this thing. And then you went like this, and like that, like that, like that. And so she said it was good. It helped. It was good. It's a good one.
Does it have to be to 100? So you literally sit there 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way to 100 the first time? You literally out loud count 1, 2, 3, all the way to 100?
You know, I mean, I never done this kind of stuff. And I don't think that there's, oh, God said you need to count to 100. I think there are many ways to go about it. I can see some skill of that because now you have the client within their own experience, eyes closed, and they are left their own devices.
Yeah.
And it would be nice that there is like a line, and they hear me, they hear the voice, it can be regulating. And then it's not, they are not spinning, oh my God. And there's like, and also I instruct them to pace it. So the most intense is at 50. So they are kind of controlling the story somehow and going there, and they know that now 50 and then 60, and somehow it seems smart to me, you know. But the other guy in the movie didn't count. So, I think there are different ways to go about it. But Peter, I mean, as I said, so this is not going to be enough for you to, it's more like will be some information what not to do and how not to fuck people up, Definitely somatic sensing is Peter Levine's approach, which is basically you can't process trauma in the story, it's more like in the body and sensation and how to do it little by little. Even in Hakomi, they were instructing us when there's trauma, you switch from Hakomi setting to somatic sensing. You switch to Peter Levine mode, so no longer deepening into thing and more like little by little.
Is there a fourth part after you read it back to them?
No, that was it.
That's it?
That's what he told me.
And the homework to listen to the recording.
I don't know. I didn't record it. I think it was pretty, yeah.
Is there a name for that thing?
I don't know the name. I can find out.
Okay.
But he told me this. I was like, wow, that's cool. Okay, I'll do it. And I did it because she was robbed again. I thought, okay, let's try something else now. It's a good chance to practice this one.
Yeah. Just real quick, I could see that also being beneficial for like discovering in a way, like what happened for that person.
Yeah.
If it's not completely clear.
Yeah.
Like to have them take that time to really sit in a calm, held, witnessed space.
Yeah.
To sort it out.
Yeah.
That's all I want to say.
Yeah. First time when she was robbed, I had her kind of imagine and then she was feeling this and that, and I just did. I trusted that she was pretty stable, and then she started shouting and then crying, and so that was good. There was some release, you know.
Did she get robbed in the same place, or is it totally different?
No, in the same place. Basically, the robbers came, and then there's some more, so they came back. You know?
Same place, and they stole the same thing again.
That makes,
And they stole the same thing again. You know,
that makes more sense
Like
than like totally
plants,
different people. and
agriculture, weed. So, how about what? We can take a little break, or we can go into questions. What would you guys feel like it?
I'm personally down for a break.
Yeah, let's do a break.
15 minutes.
No, man. I would say maximum like 10 minutes. So let's be here.
By 8.
They call butt in the seat at 8.
Back in
Butt
the
in the
seat.
seat at 8.
Sitting butts at 8.
Yeah. So we'll resume at 8.
Okay.
We. Yeah, hang on. Let me pause this a little bit. Yeah, I didn't want to. She already told me she heard some of this stuff, and then she said that she was like, wow, that was really good, but it stirred her a lot. It stirred her from her childhood and this and that. And this one would really, because she already has guilt and stuff.
She has guilt about her role as a mom.
Yeah. And
There's a interesting in the continuum concept. There's one of the readers who's writing a critique of it. She said, the first time I read this book, it destroyed me. The second time I read it for strength.
Yeah.
So I just thinking of what you just shared about your mom. The first experience is like guilty. Oh my God, I did everything wrong.
Yeah.
It's called continuum concept.
Continuum concept. Yeah.
That's how we raised Manji, that and all that stuff.
Oh,
So I want to introduce you guys 3 books. So this one, so the Hakomi method, there was one book that was in the 90s called the Hakomi Mindfulness-Based Psychotherapy, written by Ron Kurtz in the 90s. But now I think 2 years ago, because he had many students and he was not alone, Ron Kurtz, he had about 10, 15 deep other people. He died, but there are still other deep people. And then the Institute developed, and after 20, 30 years, they came up with this, which is like many good authors and therapists wrote this Hakomi mindfulness centered somatic psychotherapy, very thick, was #1 on Amazon on Psychology some year ago. I recommend it to you guys, and I can maybe send it by email. But it's full of great information and very comprehensive, even if you don't do Hakomi, but it's very useful. And yeah, it's very, very good. Now, this is excellent for couples therapy using somatic Hakomi stuff. Couples therapies using, so it's one of the old, bodies of Ron Kurtz, and he is called Experiential Psychotherapy with Couples. Experiential Psychotherapy with Couples, a guide for the creative pragmatist by Rob Fisher. And with a lot of vignettes and a lot of, the interventions and the dialogue and all that. I highly recommend it for working with couples, as well as this guy that I discovered actually very recently, and I think he's awesome, Terry Real. I put a bunch of in the COB manual, a bunch of that. Also, this book, I haven't read it, but I heard from several people and I bought it. Eastern Body, Western Mind. And then I browsed it, and also I know from other people. It's a very good combining information about chakras, I think, with very accurate and detailed, psychological information. So it's some kind of combining all these things, because from one angle, all this wounding and all this trauma, we are dealing psychologically like this, but at the same time has an effect in the energy system in a certain developmental stage, in a certain chakra. So especially if you are guys into that or your clients are into that, I usually I'm a little bit not so much in the chakras, but I browsed it and I was like, this is very good book. So I got it. Eastern body, Western mind. Also, I know for some people who did yoga teachers training, and I knew somebody else that it was like manual. It was manual for that yoga, yoga psychotherapy. How is it?
It was for 200. I was
Yeah.
assigned in a 200-hour yoga teacher training.
My lady friend did this yoga therapy, and they had to study this.
The book I recommended last week, The Ethics of Touch by Kylie Taylor, she uses a chakra model for exploring the vulnerabilities of working with clients in non-ordinary states.
Yeah.
And her chakra model is pretty righteous.
Nice.
Good work.
Yeah. You know, I remember now, because I haven't thought about it, but when I did this journey some years ago, also the person actually was very skilled. It was a colleague from Hakomi, actually, and transgender, which was pretty trippy. And very skilled in you know, medicine work. And after all this, I was like, all right, I want touch. I want body on body. I want you to be right here. No shirt. And he was like, all right, let's do it. Took off. He went on me. I needed this kind of like the missing experience, basically. That's part of the processing of stuff. It's release, feeling the somatic discomfort and the hellish sensations. And then you need the missing experience. What it didn't have needs to come up, you know? That otherwise we are seeking for sex all the time to get it, you know? And then to throw it.
Yeah.
So, and then when this was happening like, it doesn't go, as he said, the sky. There was a little bit good, and it was a little good, and then it was bad. It was like, no, and it was like, yeah, no, it was like crazy. You know, it's like I would have had to do psychotherapy for a very long time to get to those.
It's happening little by little.
Yeah, yeah. So
in terms of chakras, that's like at the College of Ayurveda, the chakras were also pertain to like higher states, normal states, lower states, and to organs as well. And the like sense of touch and stuff would be associated with like the root chakra.
I want to say something about sexual trauma. So with this somatic awareness processing and with non-dual somatic processing, we don't want to get rid of the thing. We don't want to get rid of it. We want to really let it be witnessed, and it will go by itself. So you're not trying to change it, to release it, to like get it out, you know. The only exception with that, and I know this I learned from Peter Levine, it was with sexual trauma. Basically, it's like through the, you know, abuse, there is some transmission of some toxic information that is trapped in the body. And not only the unpleasantness and the traumatic experience, but some kind of nastiness that you need to get out, you know? And so, and one of my favorite things that I use often and it works is this method. Let's say if a client, and a lot of, I mean, it's happened so much, like very often, it's very common. You already know with women, sexual abuse. And so let's say you're doing Hakomi and all that, and then it comes up, okay, well, I remember this thing. I remember this thing when I was 16, or I remember this, or like it's very clear. And then so I kind of access a little bit. I have it come a little bit, you know, until the person is able to identify some unpleasant sensation in the body, you know, which usually is lower here or something. There's like some unpleasantness in the body. So what, with non-sexual trauma, non-sexual stuff, what I would usually do, I would be like, okay, well, let's stay with that. Let's just give it space to be like, just hang out, just really welcome it completely, and see what images or memories or anything comes without trying to get rid of anything. On the contrary, I want the person to not get rid of it. But with the sexual trauma, Levine was saying this, and I use it often, and it seems to work. As soon as there's identifiable unpleasant sensation in the body, and it's clear it's connected to some sexual file, then there's this technique. I say, okay, I say, all right, let's do something. So I say, so really keep your attention where you feel the most unpleasantness, and you really pay attention to it. And then together, we are going to make the sound voo, voo, into the sensation, like a laser, jackhammer. And so then explain the person and say, okay, so just stay with the sensation there. And then we make it sound voo, and then we do it together, like, then like voo, and then she does it, and you do it like 4 or 5 times into that area where it feels unpleasantness. And I know this is inspired by some Tibetan sound, maybe all kind of stuff. I don't know. It doesn't matter. It works. And then doing 4 or 5 times, and then you say, okay, now let's just pause, and now just witness. So no more voo. Just notice what's happening and allow any feeling, any sensation, any memories, anything. Just see what comes up. See if the energy is somewhere else. So witness a little bit, and there may come other stuff. It may basically that opens up and it bubbles up with images, memories, or some belief or something. Witness a little bit, and then I say, okay, where's now? Oh, now it's kind of here, or it's still some more. Okay, let's do again. Strong, you know, a few times, 4 or 5 times, 6 times, and then again, witness, stop, let's just witness, see what's happening, see what's coming up, and do this a few times. I like that. That seems to work, and it's also actionable. There's something. It's not just like you know. I use that all the time, whenever there is any of that. Just it's more like to dispel some of this and shake it, dispel it, open it, dispel it, and then later we can deal with, like, you know, psychological impacts and the belief and boundaries and you know, what was the message that you got. You know, you still have to do all that, but this is more like a, and then maybe some smudging at the end, some Palo Santo, some shaking, some rattle. I totally do all that, you know.
I had a client on Tuesday that we were dealing with some sexual trauma like that, and she couldn't make sound. And I use sound a lot in sessions,
Yeah.
and she couldn't make any sound on the exhale. And I hadn't really experienced that with a client before, that like couldn't access sound in the breath at all. She wasn't able or willing to do it. So I'm wondering if you've seen that, and what else?
I haven't seen that. I would still do it, and see, I'll say, okay, you just imagine, you just hear this, you just do it in your mind, and I'll do it for you.
Okay.
I'll just
we
do
did
that.
sort of like a variation of that, I would say.
Yeah. I noticed when I had stuff journeys myself, I was like feeling all this, and then I really wanted to ask the guide to hold me or to hold my hand, but I couldn't. I just couldn't. It was like I couldn't. And then I summoned this and then to ask, but I couldn't, you know. And this was common in my, is there something I wanted really something, but I couldn't ask for it. I couldn't, you know. And then finally I'm like, it's like, can you, I wanted to ask you to hold my hand. And then he was very good, he was like, well, ask me. He said, I'm like, okay. It's like, you know, so it was intense. Yeah. I mean, definitely, you know, in alternative, you know, especially in altered state, then definitely use of touch is necessary or important, with all the caveats and all that. And so, yeah. Well, if you have any questions about this or anything else.
Are there any videos where I could watch? This boo sound. It's new to me. Is there any videos that I could watch?
I just there's this audio book, audible, like audio book, yes, called Sexual Healing by Peter Levine.
Oh, okay, right.
Peter Levine, and then he says, hey, you can do this alone, but you know, it's good to have a therapist, but you can do with a therapist or do this alone. And he does a lot, he explains what's happening, what's the whole thing with the sexual.
He uses this a lot.
It's his, yeah. And then he uses all those things, how to find a safe spot in the body, how to feel the body, how to feel this. Let's say the end result, if we were to process trauma, what would happen is that we would feel like I'm here, I'm real, I'm here, my body's here, and I can be present now. Because all this is like, no, I need to do this, I need to do that, I need to watch this, I need to do some porn, I need to smoke, I need to do that, I need to, it's always later planning, you know?
Yeah.
So definitely Sexual Healing by Peter Levine. Many exercises and practices.
Is there a time to touch on PTSD, or is that like the next week thing?
Well, like a PTSD is trauma.
Right, but it's a bit different than, I would say, your normal waking trauma.
Post-traumatic stress disorder,
yeah,
PTSD.
Like with combat veterans, like I work mainly with combat veterans. Like I have a client who's a sniper for 20 years right now, for instance. And while it's great and amazing and really deep, I'm always looking to broaden my practice. Yeah, anything.
Well, any of this stuff that we talked, but we didn't go into what exactly to do, but you know, there's some trapped images and terrible stuff in the body, and so developing mindfulness, if they can, developing awareness, and then at some point to go there, identify some event, not all of them all at once, some event, and you can even use the thing with the, because some are deeply imprinted, like seared, you know, this, and stepped on the bomb, and then his guts explode, and like it's like there, you know.
Yeah, for the first time he was able to go and get groceries by himself since he returned from the wars. And that was just a week ago. And he was funny, he was telling me about, he was in the grocery store and started feeling like really anxious, and then he remembered one of the somatic movement therapies that had him. And he's like sitting, he's got his cart there in the middle of the grocery aisle, and he's just sitting there doing like balancing a ball on this one thing and then like moving to another movement therapy. It was like, he was like, I was sitting there laughing at myself, and then all the problems seemed to go away. It was like, it's perfect.
like in that movie, if you guys saw, actually there are 2 movies I recommend. One, it's called Hurt Locker.
Hurt Locker.
Hurt Locker.
Yeah, it's a good one.
It was this guy who was in Afghanistan, and his job was to disassemble bombs.
Yeah, it's a really good movie.
He spent hundreds of days, and he would come back to Safeway with aisles of. He was like, "The fuck, this is bullshit." So he needed to go back. No?
Yeah.
And there's another one called Mine. Very good.
M-I-N-E.
Yeah, Mine. There was these 2 people in Afghanistan. Do some special mission snipers. And then they go back to camp now, and then one steps on a mine and explodes, and the other one is like, and he realized that he stepped on it. And then, so basically he couldn't move now, because if he moves, he blows. And then he calls, "Hey guys, you know, my body is blown and I'm here. I need some steam to help me." They said, "Yeah, well, you know, in 3 days." So the guy now basically journeyed. You had 3 days where he was like that day and night, and then all his fucking trauma with his father who was beating him and all that, and this or that, and hallucination. Very, very beautiful. It's on Netflix. Mine.
Good.
Also From Shock to Awe. Really good one.
From what?
From Shock to Awe. It's about veterans.
From shock to awe?
From shock to awe. It's
Oh,
about
like
vets.
A-H.
Yeah, no, AWE.
Oh, from shock to
awe.
oh, yeah.
Yeah, and it's about veterans going to really good centers for ayahuasca and dealing with trauma in that way, and all the success with that. And one of the guys, while he was at ayahuasca, his wife was doing MDMA therapies. She was also in the army or whatever, and so then when they met, you know, like he just comes back from ayahuasca, she just came back from MDMA therapies, and they were both just like fell in love all over again, and they're all good now. And these people were like hardcore veterans.
Yeah,
it's pretty
nice. Amazing. Yeah, for this intense traumatic stuff, intense, devastating stuff that it's hard to access, it's hard to go there. MDMA, assisted psychotherapy. It was used for that.
Yeah,
that the whole thing can come up in a different light that can be integrated somehow, and it's a meaning comes out and some processing. And ayahuasca, I heard 5.
If it's held right, yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Right.
Also, like peer support, so you're not alone. So group stuff for what you asked me. Group stuff, group support, and usually they have rejection towards like non-military guy. They're like, there's like a pussy, forget about it, you know. So they want somebody
who understands it. Thank you. Yeah. I'm not a veteran. I'm a veteran of like war on drugs, a veteran of our addictive culture, all those types of things, but not a war veteran. And he's actually, I mean, the first few weeks, you know, there was no accessing, not even close, not even a pinky toe in there, like nothing. And it was just all about really letting him just express himself and like talk about the things that he's afraid to talk to about with his military colleagues and whatnot.
Yeah.
And he appreciated that I wasn't a military veteran.
Yeah.
Because I had just a different arena to work with.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, I do have a client who actually I never met in person because started recently, and former military guy, former serious military guy. And when I try to meditate, he will fall asleep right away, and his phone will drop. So I couldn't do it. So basically, I'm stuck. I'm doing some kind of talk therapy that I'm very displeased with what I'm able to do on the phone without somatic processing, without anything. I'm like, this is bullshit. However, he is like, oh my God, man, I'm so happy. I talk to you. I love you so much, man. This is so great. You understand. So I'm like, really? Oh, okay. You know, for people like that, that's just to open up, just to talk, just something, because usually it's stigma that you need to be vulnerable, and so he's getting a lot of stuff. I'm like, okay, well, good.
Yeah.
Also,
So meditation isn't for everyone. Like people with deep trauma generally don't meditate that well.
Yeah.
Because they're stuck in this space where they're not used to, and it's unfamiliar, and they're looking at themselves, and it's even guided. Like, you know, the way what I was educated on is like people like war veterans and stuff like that. We don't do meditations at first until they can resource themselves, until that they're, you know, they've done some preliminary work. So then they can step into the meditation arena and finally confront themselves and confront their visions and all the things. It's pretty interesting. I just can't stand people like, oh, just meditate. It's like, dude, no. Like, that's not how it works. Not with everyone. You know?
Yeah, we to take people where they are.
I have a question
yeah.
about the timing of the tapping. You could just, like, I would like to use it, and I have an idea of when to use
The
it.
Scott method of tapping.
Like the timing, like when they're kind of, the wave is kind of rising and falling. It seems like if what my understanding is, maybe just to verify, is like it's the purpose is to like refocus to the present moment and to interrupt the like identification with the feeling,
with the thoughts.
right?
Yeah, so it's according to Scott, and I usually didn't like this. I thought it's bullshit. Witnessing is better, but I started to implement it, and I could see that it works. And he's saying also for you know, if you are able to just witness, and if it's not too much, witnessing is enough. All that you need to do. However, if let's say there is some, you know, let's say it's a lot of flooding of images and memories, and then it's a lot, and then the tendency now one's consciousness will be lost into that, and that's not helpful. So to disrupt the trance, so you instruct them to, if they are lots of thoughts or lots of images and like that, keep seeing them. So it's not that you don't want to distract them away from it. So let them come while also tapping, and notice both the images as they come, slideshow, as well as you are aware of the sound of tapping and the sensation of tapping. So that disrupts the trance. And also, according to Peter Levine, when you are dissociated, you are not in your body, you're not in your senses. So now you are hearing and sensing. I think somebody told me here that, hey, this tapping didn't work for me because I don't feel anything here, so there's no sensation, but still there's sound, you know? And actually I didn't do it, but I noticed that Scott has all these things, like if it's really sticky, Velcro, it's Velcro stuff, intense stuff, he's like doing these things, okay, well, like shift focus and like look at the finger like this and look like that and like this and like that, and then one eye, come closer, look at it like that, and the other eye, and now look at the surface, okay, and now go back to that thing, okay.
So that's like EMDR basically?
No,
like that?
No,
really.
It's to disrupt the Velcro, the identification with images or voices, and then have a little more, realize, oh, there's more than this, man. I mean, I'm here, there's colors, there's sounds. It's some kind of titration from one angle, you know, and come back to the present, and then go back to the shit, and then come back to this. I haven't used it, but I can see that it's great. I mean, I think I mentioned about that thing, like, are you, you know, there's this with people, are you this thing in the chest? Or are you that which is aware of it? They say, well, I'm both. I'm this, man. And so, and they say, okay, well, all right, come out, and like, can you just squeeze your thumb? So it's already now, they are no longer there with the attention sucked into that, and they squeeze their thumb, and then you ask them, hey, are you this sensation of the thumb, or you're that which is aware of it? Oh, I am that which is aware of it. Okay, let's go back to that, you know?
It's interesting. From my understanding, it was like all developed for children on the autistic spectrum at first, a lot of somatic therapies. And they started noticing it works really well with adults.
Which one?
Just most of the somatic movement therapies, like, are, from my understanding of what I've read and looked up, is that it was first developed and experimented with for children on the autistic spectrum. And then they were like, oh, this was great for adults too. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I don't know, perhaps. Yeah, I believe you. Any other questions on any of this or any other stuff?
There's a definition, I'm going to use it loosely, of trauma that I got from a teacher recently, and I'm just curious if you have some comment on it. And she suggests that trauma is basically any event or experience that caused you to trust yourself less. That's her kind of running definition of trauma. Is that land anywhere? Is it
I'm thinking about it.
I guess it would, you know, as I think about it, it's kind of like it would, trusting myself less would mean I'm probably identifying with a deficiency self.
Yeah.
I feel like it's incomplete.
It's just it's a very
broad. It's very broad. Yeah.
It's meant to be broad, and I think that this particular teacher then would go on from that and say, once you actually realize that that incident helps you trust yourself more, because you're wiser, you have experience, then you've healed from that.
So yeah, building resilience. I mean, Peter Levine was saying, I was just brushing up on what he was saying, saying that what happens is some sense of disconnection from oneself, disconnection from God, disconnection from your body, disconnection from others. With your thing, I mean, it didn't, you know, so I had that, you know, let's say separation from the mother and all this traumatic stuff. However, I was saying to my grandma was awesome. And I had 6 years of perfect peace and being loved wonderfully. So from one angle, I realized actually I did my 5, and it had nothing to do with my mother and all that. But when I came back, it just came, oh, I see what happened. My mother had this thing with her dad. My mother didn't get what she needed from her dad. She didn't know how to do it. And then she sent me there. And actually, that was perfect. She was awesome. Thank you that she sent me to my grandma, because she was much better equipped to be stable and loving. And there was, I think I would have been much worse if I stayed as, you know. Yeah. And, but somehow I rejected her. And then now somehow I had this, it came download that now everything, the whole universe tries to love me. Everybody wants to love me, and I don't let it in. You know, it was obvious. Anyway, but come back to you, that I felt safe and loved and confident. However, I did have abandonment and attachment trauma. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So that idea of gaining resilience is like trusting yourself more as a result of the incident.
Yeah, actually there was some study, I read it somewhere, that there was some, the trauma is that all that is happened, and then I'm frozen and it's all, and it's spinning like this unresolved. And there was this study, there was this guy who kind of kidnapped kids, and he kidnapped like 10 kids and kept them in captivity, and they were all from like 3 to, I don't know, the young kids. And then one of them escaped, was very hard, Very traumatic, the experience for everybody, including for him, including the escape. He escaped. He found the authorities. Due to him, he saved everybody.
Right.
Everybody was traumatized except him. Because he escaped. He did something with that. You know, the idea is not that something bad happened, but that it is frozen. And that's why, you know, you guys saw The Last Samurai.
Yeah.
Last Samurai with, I highly recommend, with Tom Cruise. And then basically he was saying the samurai, because Tom Cruise had PTSD, because he did what he didn't want to do. He was used. He went against his conscience. And it was all this stuff, that memories of the children and all that. But the samurai, who had even more stuff and cutting heads and all that, he was sleeping well. He was all good, you know. So it was just, it's not just something traumatic, but then what happened with it, you know. So actually that guy, you know, he had now more resilience, more confidence, the kid who escaped, you know. He's like a hero. So the energy of all the thing was metabolized as a hero, you know. Also, one thing I use when people go into all that, or they start to talk about, oh man, this or that, I say, hey, I just want to let you know, you have already survived. You survived. So I'm glad, man, that was fucked up and you made it. So congratulations. Mm-hmm. Great. All right, so let's go into it now, you know? So helps to establish the truth, you know?
Funny, I just found a poem that I wrote last year, and it was, I survived and now I thrive. It was all about the traumas of my childhood, which weren't, I didn't live in gangland.
Yeah.
I didn't go to war. I didn't have to crawl over dead bodies. I didn't see any of that, but I got ridiculed.
Yeah.
I had sarcastic sibling rivalry going on all the time. The hell of one-upmanship. And so there was never a safe place in there, but I survived it. And so now I thrive. I survived and now I thrive.
Yeah, there's this element of perceived. It's perceived, and then what's traumatic for somebody, something's big for somebody, it's what's small for somebody is very big for somebody else. And it can be, you know, just the coach shouting at you, everybody laughing at you and all that. And now all-time self-anxiety, you know. It's interesting. I escaped into marijuana as my tool from like age 13 to 24. And what you said earlier about once you've gotten on a spiritual path and you start to resource yourself, now you're ready. Yeah.
Because I was 28, 4 years after I finally quit smoking regularly. And I was at a Zen monastery and I was doing my healing work. And that was the first time I experienced and felt anger. Because I had stuffed that anger away. That was not safe to feel anger. And I didn't feel it from age, you know, I probably didn't feel it in my childhood much, at least with any kind of adult awareness, but it was till 28 years old when I finally woke up. Like, oh, there's anger. That's what that feels like. Wow.
Yeah.
And I was resourced at that point. Safe.
Yeah, I remember that I was somehow, it was good for me. I needed it and it's all great. But I was, when I was younger, in a spiritual thing, which I didn't know, but it was a cult. And I was very, very close to the teacher and I thought he's my hero. But he was definitely, had a lot of issues, and it took me 10 years to realize that. And then I left, but there was a lot of anger, a lot of betrayal, and a lot of, was intense. And at that time I was in touch, and then I slapped some metapana on it. You know, the metapana, the Buddhist loving kindness. I mean, after about a year of that, spending my 13 years in that thing, and suddenly cut off, exile, whatever, then I go Thich Nhat Hanh, Vipassana, it's all good, and Metapana. It's like, oh, may all beings be happy, may all beings be free from suffering, may all beings, I pardon all those who hurt me willingly and unwillingly. And so, which is a great thing. So I was doing that, and I was studying David Hawkins, and he says to be loving, lovingness towards all things, no matter what, which is true.
Mm-hmm.
And so somehow I put all this on top, and then, but whenever the topic of that guy will come, whenever anybody will say anything, I'll be like, oh man, it's like, oh, this is not right. So, and at one point, then I got into more serious meditation. And one time I meditated maybe like 2 hours. Like first time I meditated longer. And then I would feel like my jaw was tightening and my this was like that. And I just went to MKP, to Mankind Project, for the first time after maybe 2 or 3 weeks. And I was noticing in longer meditation, I'll get this thing. And then, so I think for the first time I saw in the Mankind Project groups, I was like, I had this idea to be like, hey, what is this? Let me talk. Let's ask this. What is this? What do you want? And I didn't have no experience about processing like that. I would just come back to the present. My thing was to come back to being present. I wasn't processing my stuff. And then it came like, what is this? And I had images of the guy. Also, there was a lot of shit and sexual shit. There was a lot of bad shit, for a long time. So I would have image of the guy, and I'll be like, and I asked him, what is it? What do you want? And he said, I want to take him down. I want to take them all down. I want to hurt them. And I was like, whoa, dude, that's very un-Buddhist of you, man. But anyway, it came up after like 4 years of this stuff. And then, so I needed to do, so my New Warrior training initiation was not with my dad. They were trying to get me to my dad. And I told the guy, dude, it's not about my dad. It's this guy who was more than my dad.
Right.
So, yeah, bypassing, I'm planning next time. I mean, feel free to use this time for any questions or stuff. But I'm planning next time to kind of use, like, let's say, bring some, it's more like for you guys, not so much. I mean, you can work with clients, but the most sophisticated, mostly the high consciousness, non-dual processing, which is if the person is already done some work and they are aware and sophisticated, then that will work the best. Like even, self-inquiry, if one has done some work and not bypassed the basement, and the basement is already a bit open, then self-inquiry is like magic. Like I'm in the shower and I have these recurring dissatisfied thoughts about women and this or that, and the mind is trying to solve it, and it's trying to do this and keeps trying to find a solution, the mind trying to find a solution, but the solution is never there. It's not there. And it's not in that, it's okay. So you just go like, okay, to whom do these thoughts appear? To whom do these thoughts appear? But not as a mental stuff. This is like, it's a bomb actually. Especially if one has experience about our true nature and presence and already pre-existing, non-dual realization. This is like, to whom do these thoughts appear? And then let that, so basically it totally dispels all that stuff, and you're just back into, and all these collapses and everything's fine. And then actually the solution, something that you need to do or not do will come from our presence, not from the mind chewing on some solution, So the Sedona release technique and some type of inquiry applied to shit. So this is more basically what I use for myself or for people who are more, or already, let's say, sophisticated clients, so to say, or on a spiritual path.
Are we gonna do the Sedona technique stuff?
Yeah. We don't have time for it now. We have like 15 minutes, so I will.
Can you outline it?
Yeah. You guys are good with questions and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you do it on someone? Because I learn much more than if I watch you do it on somebody. Whoever volunteers. Yeah, we have.
Yeah, but we don't have time for it.
No.
What about an outline tonight and a
Yeah,
demonstration?
I
next
can
time?
do an outline tonight, and then we can do it next time. Actually, it works better.
How
I'll
long
bring
does it take?
I'll bring the board because it's actually
More than 15 minutes, obviously. Okay.
what?
It takes longer than 15 minutes to do
Yeah,
it?
but I'll just teach it, and then we'll do it next time, or you do it on yourself.
Okay.
Also, I think I might have done it with some of you already. Other times.
Okay. You just didn't know what it was called.
Yeah, we didn't know how it was called.
Go on, Mihai. Okay, there you go. Your markers are rolling away. Catch them. Now, since it's a Sedona release technique, it probably has something to do with vortexes and red rocks, right?
No.
No?
You can't call it the Sedona technique. It's what people can use.
So
Oh.
this one I learned.
That's the release technique.
So at I started to work with Laura Lucille. Laura Lucille is Francis Lucille's wife, and Francis was my teacher. I mean, still my teacher, and I didn't know he has a wife. And then after some time, I realized that he has a wife, and then actually, his wife is very, very like a sage wife. It's like a conscious, enlightened woman, which actually is very good, especially if you have mother issues and stuff. Very healing to kind of work with an enlightened woman, because it's more like the opposite. So this method that she got from her teacher, Lester Levinson, which I highly recommend. It was a guy who, yeah, there's some stuff on YouTube, quite a bit. And he basically was a nice guy, but pretty stressed. And then when he was about 40, he had so many ulcers and gastrointestinal stuff and heart attack and all that because of he had a lot of somatization basically. And he had a heart attack, and the doctor told him, hey man, you shouldn't walk too much in the house because you don't have much to live. You're going to die anyway, so you want to just chill. He was like 42 or something, and he was like, what? So he kind of he was never into too many spiritual teachings before, but somehow death slaps you in the face. He's a great teacher. So he locked himself somewhere, and then he started to be, man, what is this? What's my life? What's going on? What's somehow he was lucky, and somehow he started to he stumbled upon this method of releasing, really releasing subconscious material, and then he then he recovered, and actually he lived to be kind of 80. And he lived another like 40 years after that, and yeah. Also, it is based a little bit on this Ramana Maharishi, Ramana, who was a great Indian sage, like one of the grandfathers of, non-duality now in the West, who said this thing like, let what comes come, let what goes go, and see what remains. Be interested in what remains. You are that. You know? So, so that with this method of neti and discrimination, and then anyway, so I was starting to, I attended her events, and then she, unlike Francis, who is just, you know, either talking intellectually and satsang like intellectual, and then doing meditations and some other stuff, she was doing this unusual meditation, which was like there would be first presence and, you know, settling, and then as you were present and settled, she would just stir shit, man. She would just stir it. And like intentionally saying, hey, now think about something, some memory that you really, really don't want to think about it, and it's really haunts you, and so this thing that you really, anyway. So she was doing this, and I was very surprised how effective it was, like. And then I started to have some one-on-one with her, and she started to do this. She didn't tell me, hey, this is the method, but then I realized, and then she, anyway, I found out, and then I kind of got it. So it's like that. And it's very simple. And actually, Lester started to teach it, and then Lester died, and he left somebody in some successor, and actually it became the Sedona release technique. And actually now it still exists, and you have to pay thousands and thousands of dollars to learn it. So now it's really cheap here. And also, I went because they advertise it now. I don't like it. It's all very commercial, and everybody's like, "Oh my God, I went there. I feel so good, and now I have this. I bought this car." So it's like bullshit now, I think. So it is like that, basically. So I use it often, actually. I use it very often. Let's say we identify some belief, or we identify some recurring pattern. You don't even need to know the belief. Or some shit that is happening in your life. So it can be, you just need to identify a problematic thing. You know, ideally, if you can zoom into a belief, you have the belief or the deficiency story, or something, and then basically what I do, sometimes this is more like this Sedona release technique, it's an unprogramming or processing technique, so it helps to unprogram. Yeah, so but first you need to identify it, and then I want the person to, you know, this, I have this pattern that, you know, when I'm flip-flopping, when I'm not with the woman, I'm really wonderful and loving, I want to be with her so much, oh, I love you so much and all that, and as soon as I'm with the woman, then I'm like, I don't feel anything and I don't want to be with her. Okay, so it's pretty straight up, you know, something like that. Or the client has the belief, you know, I will, no matter what I do, it's never going to work. So you identify some particular something. Yeah, and then you have the person a little bit, okay, so can you just be with this and really welcome this, some basic, you know, Hakomi on it is just welcome any images, any memories connected to it. Can you just welcome this thing, any images, memories, feelings about this thing? So you kind of immerse the client a little bit into that particular thing. Yeah. And then you have them kind of steep in the shit a little bit. And then you can do this mentally, or you can do it with a piece of paper, and then you take that item, you know, that whatever that item is, the problematic issue, you put it on top, you know, X, whatever, I'm not worthy, or can't trust men, or the world is not safe, or why am I attracted, or especially when people say, I don't know why something. This is very good for a why something. Why am I oh yeah, I did this. Somebody said, you know, I have this, that I keep being attracted to rescue men, you know, like rescue dog, like a project, like basically turmoiled, pained, struggling men, and actually I'm attracted to them, and then I end up being rescuer and my project, and this keeps happening, and what the fuck, why am I doing this? All right, great. So it's already, we hone into this. Let's, well, and you try to, first of all, identify and make it crisp. Okay, this is it. This is the item, and repeat a few times. This is item here. And then you say to the client, also this can be self-done. You can do it by yourself, on yourself. I often do it. And you're like, okay, so let's just be with this, welcome this, let it kind of, this file of being attracted by rescues, struggling men, let's let it be here right now. And also have the client be very aware. And this works very good if the client is really present and resting as awareness and in a more meditative state like that. And then you say, okay, can you imagine a white piece of paper with a line in the middle like this, and on the left side of the page you have A, which means advantages. On the right side of the paper you have D, disadvantages. This can work very well. Laura was doing it for me. She wanted me to put it on a paper. This actually works very well because you put it out, you put it down, you know. You can have a piece of paper. And then with the eyes closed, you ask. Also, what's interesting, that although I'm pretty sure Scott doesn't know about this method, he has this utility inquiry. Like when there's some shit and he's suffering, he's like, okay, what am I getting out of this? So it's kind of the same thing, but he called it the utility inquiry. And this is like, what am I getting out of it? What's the advantage of this shitty thing that keeps happening? Or what's the utility of it? So you have the client be in ideally the present, aware spaciousness, and then you say, okay, what is one advantage? What is one advantage of you maintaining this pattern of being attracted to struggling men? And then you instruct, also I instruct the person, hey, this is not just a cognitive person, no, it's not just a cognitive process. I'm going to ask you this thing, but it's not really rational. I want you to really just stay with the stillness and see what naturally comes up. Take your time. And something comes up, let me know. Yeah? So I do want them to say something. And usually they say, oh, sometimes they say, well, I don't know, there's nothing, this is fucked up. It's like, whoa, hang on, let's just check. And all the time comes, oh yeah, I get to, so they say something like, I get to feel, I'm helping them. Yeah, it feels good to be helping them. They say something, they say a thought, yeah, with the eyes closed. And I'm like, yo, great, yeah. So I'm like, I repeat it. I'm really making sure they get it. So they say the thought, and then I say, okay. So, and now welcome anything else that comes up connected to what you just said. And then it can be an image, a memory, a contraction in the chest or something. So, and then I have them witness. I have them witness. Basically, the question is not so much to cognitively find out what it is. The question is like a probe, actually. And it's like a stone, it's like a ripple. And then there will be some ripple in our water, you know? And then you instruct the person or yourself to just, from awareness, to just witness whatever comes up. And this, basically, it's like evokes stuff. And you instruct them to just be with it until it settles, until it's more calm. And then you write it down, and then you say, okay, is it calm, more settled now? Yeah. All right, so now go to the right side of the page, and what is one disadvantage of you maintaining this thing. I mean, I did it once, like I was in the airport and I was like, man, why am I so attached to this woman that I keep leaving, and what the fuck, man? I'm so tired of this shit. Why is this happening? So I was, okay, this shit that I'm so attached to this thing is crazy shit. Great. And I'll be like, what's one advantage of this dynamic? And I'll be like, oh man, this is intense. It's yummy. It's like, I feel alive. Yeah. Ooh. And then comes a thought, and also there's release. Basically, there's all this stuff. It comes up, mental stuff comes up, and non-mental stuff comes up. That in awareness. And you go to D. What's one disadvantage? What's the cost of this? Well, the client will say something as a thought, and then you say, oh yeah, it's that. Yeah, good. So you have them more like deepen into what they say, and then you say, and welcome anything else, any thought, images, sensation, no matter how irrational, bubbling up in your field in relation to what you just said. And then, so usually stuff come up, especially people are more aware, all kind of crazy shit, some memory from childhood, some this, and they come, and you just watch, just witness, nothing to do, it's just witness all this, let them come up, just image thought, until it settles down. And then you say, okay, let's go back to A. What's another advantage of this thing? And then they say it, and you do the same protocol. You hone it back to them, what they said, and you encourage them to welcome and witness anything else that may come. Take your time. So you encourage for the whole file to open up. And then you go back to D. Sometimes people, they go into, oh yeah, D. They say, hey, whoa, hey, hang on, let's slow it down. Let's just one here. So it's important to do one here, one here, one here, one here. One. So don't do just all advantages and all disadvantages. This going back and forth like that is kind of crazy making in a way. It's kind of like, whoa, it stirs the pot very good, And so you do all this thing until at some point it's like peace, And so anyway, this is the process. And then they will know. I've done it with this lady. She was like, okay, now you know why. What I mean? So because there was a lot of stuff here. Start with the dad, and when she was a kid, the dad was drinking, and then she was used to this, and that's what she knew about love. And so it's like a jackhammer to evoke subconscious material, But make sure that you say this thing, what's one advantage of you maintaining this belief that you are unworthy? What's one advantage of you maintaining? What's one disadvantage of you maintaining this belief? What's another advantage of you maintaining this belief, which is a story in your head, this inner voice, So, yeah, and then this can be done multiple times. At some point, it reaches like, okay, it's like peace. It really helps to write it down. Sometimes I often do it not writing it down, but it's recommended to write it down. Ideally, you do it while the client is really, you first do some guided meditation and they are deep into the aware space. And then you take time, it's like somatic, awareness-based this. And you tell them, hey, this is not rational. It seems like it's rational, but it's not rational. Yeah, ideally do it like that. This being said, this will be beneficial even if you do it cognitively. Like with the client who falls asleep and all that, I did it like that. I say, hey, dude, what's one, I didn't, like this, like we're talking like guys, hey man, what are you getting out of this? Okay, what is the disadvantage of this? So even that will be good CBT, I mean, yes. Now this is yeah, I really encourage you to do anything that is bothering you. You know, I once was with Laura, and I know that she doesn't want story, and she will be like, yeah, you know, you want me to take me in all that which is not real. Yeah, I'm not going there with you. So I think I mentioned to you that, and I had a headache. I was like, oh man, I have this headache, and she said, okay, well, let's call it the headache. She didn't even know what the item was, and she had me. What's one advantage of this headache? The headache was the dynamic of the kind of crazy, weird relational shit that I kept maintaining, you know? So, you know, it doesn't need the story. And it brought up so much, and somehow the idea that this is released into the witnessing, you know, and this back and forth, it's like it's mysterious and irrational, so it stirs it in a way. This is like variation 1. There is like, let's say, there's a variation 1, and then there's a variation 2, which doesn't quite work unless the people already done this. You know, basically, variation 2 works if the file has been thoroughly explored a little bit. You want me to tell you variation 2? I think it's already 9. I think we should just stop here, and we can definitely do some group thing next time. You can bring up something, all of you, some particular dish, and then we can do a group, and then whoever is more hot, we can do some out loud. And then I can do the variation 2.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, Mihai.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Let's finish with like 3 bells, you know, if we can. Thank you, and
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
may this benefit you and people that you work with. When I told Laura that I'm doing this with clients, she was like, oh man, it's very good. Excellent. You know?
And think about how many people work in these.